all roads lead to Rolex. I don't care how crazy and independent and interesting your watches may be, how crazy your collection is. At the end of the day, it's just a simple Rolex that ends up not only on your wrist, but on your most recent credit card statement. I don't care when. That's just how it works. I just bought one. We're talking all about it today. What is up, Watch Fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop.
My name is Sam, and today's episode is brought to you by Henson Shaving.
All right, more on them later. Today's episode is great. I just bought a new watch, or a very old watch rather, but it's a new watch to me, and it's a Rolex, as you may have already guessed. And it's going to be the catalyst for today's conversation, which is going to talk about, this watch itself, what it is, why I bought it, and in a more large way, right? The real thesis of the episode is no matter where your collection takes you, and it usually takes you into really weird watchmaking and obscure independent stuff, at the end of the day, you still end up buying and wearing Rolexes. And we're going to talk about why. So today's going to be a good one.
I like it. And spoiler alert, this is obviously he bought a precious metal gold Rolex.
Naturally.
It's becoming a running joke now, I think, or just kind of part of every episode that I do with you.
Joke's on me.
Jokes, I guess so, on your credit card statement. I want to start things off with, and being that we're going to talk about Rolex, and to the viewers out there, whether you're at work, at home, whatever you may be doing, take a second, close your eyes, and I just want to know, what was everyone's earliest memory of Rolex?
The question is interesting, and what's more interesting is how I'm thinking, not only do I have a great first memory of Rolex, but I wonder if anyone has a better memory of any brand than their first memory of Rolex. It's such a special thing. My first memory was being upstairs in my dad's office, which was in an un-air-conditioned attic that was very hot in the summer, that he would sit me on his lap on multiple occasions and show me the Rolex website, and particularly GMTs and Submariners. And he would comb through them and tell me how important the Rolex was and how he was going to have one day. And, yeah, it was very aspirational. It was very, very beautiful.
That's a beautiful little thing. I was going to say my first memory of Rolex is when I was a kid, my dad and I would always watch the James Bond films, especially the earlier ones. And we always loved we always watched Goldfinger. And I remember we'd go to Blockbuster and we watched Goldfinger, and there's that one iconic Blockbuster, baby. Huh? And there's that one iconic shot of James Bond in the white dinner jacket with the Submariner on, and they cut away with the NATO. And I didn't know that was a Rolex at the time, but as I started to just consume more content and grow a little bit older, I realized that was a Rolex. And what then brought me back to being a kid was anything that James Bond wore or did at the time, in these movies, I was so enamored by as a kid, and it was like, oh well, if Bond wears a Rolex, I want a Rolex.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's how I thought about it, and that's my first intro to Rolex in general.
And what's kind of funny is I don't even think at the time that was a collaboration between Rolex and Bond. I don't believe that there was any evidence there. I think that it was just when the novels were originally written by Ian Fleming, he put a Rolex on Bond's wrist, and he wasn't being paid for that. That was just what it was.
Really? So
some of the greatest marketing of all time was just completely free, which is hysterical. And it ended up being a very rare Rolex, a rare big crown Submariner.
And I'm surprised that I get why you got a Rolex, but and it's funny because you recently just started wearing your date just again.
Yeah, well, no, I wouldn't say that I recently started wearing it again. I never stopped wearing it.
You never stopped wearing it, but you weren't wearing it as often.
I'm wearing it more often now, yes.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
Yes.
And that kind of goes into the conversation of not that you get out of love with Rolex, but there are times where you get into something else, whether it be Cartier or in your case, Piaget, and you come back to old reliable.
It's kind of funny, right? And that's the journey of every watch collector in many ways, or many watch collectors. Once you first get into watches, you're obsessed with Rolex. It's the greatest thing in the world. And then a lot of watch collectors that really read a lot and consume a lot, right? People that are really doing a lot of research, often, like anything, they want the next thing, the better thing, right? They learn more. They say, okay, wow, Rolex is actually fairly mundane. It's actually not, the be all end all in watches. There's more, right? There's Jaeger LeCoultre, right? There's Patek Philippe, and then after that, you say, holy crap, crap. There are independent brands, you know. There's MB&F, there's FP Journe, you know. There's all these different, this world of, you know, Roger Smith and Philippe Dufour. It never ends, you know. And the more reading you do and the more money you have,
of course,
you just continue to, you know, kind of go and expand. And in many ways, nothing's ever enough. And you're always trying to find the coolest thing, the next coolest thing, the next coolest thing. It never stops, right? The idea of a one watch collector is, you know, it's a bygone kind of, you know, fantasy, you know. And yet, at the end of the day, almost all of the watch collectors I know, no matter how crazy and great and how much money they've spent, and far more money than Rolex money, they end up buying Rolex again.
Interesting.
They end up back in a white gold sub, or they end up back in a Daytona, or they end up back in a Yachtmaster.
So, in your opinion, why do you think that happens?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about toward the end of the episode.
All right,
but right now, we'll talk about my new Rolex.
Oh, this thing is just...
This is wild. So I bought this watch a little while ago. I bought this watch maybe 3 months ago. And I bought it in a package of watches. The Theo and Harris watch shop, where we sell vintage Rolex and Tudor and Omega and Patek on occasion and Cartier very often, you know, allows me to always be acquiring new watches. I'm always buying inventory. So I bought this as a piece of inventory. And in the photos that I purchased in, the dial was not that crazy. I knew it was purple, but it wasn't insane. And I never opened up the package after I bought it. I bought the package and I put it in the bank because I said, I'll open this when we're going to do photos, and these watches aren't going down in value, so I'm good, right? It's fine. And that was 3 months ago. Just the other day, I go to the bank, I pick up a couple of watches, this bag of watches, which are still sealed in a padded pack. And clearly I trust my dealer very much. I didn't even open up to check the watches, you know. And
Classic.
I see this Rolex Day-Date, this single quickset Rolex Day-Date, 18038. And I say, oh my God, this dial, the purple, is so much wilder than I ever could have imagined. Okay. 18 karat yellow gold, almost unpolished, maybe polished a little, but basically a thick, sharp case. And it's just a beautiful watch with this crazy purple dial that was born champagne, born gold, and that has, you know, aged to this wild purple. And the timing was perfect because we just got in a new shipment of exotic leather straps. And if for those of you who know me, you know I'm obsessed with exotic leather. I freaking it's my favorite thing to wear. I love wearing, you know, browns and blacks and purples and greens and blues, grays. We have so many new straps in the strap shop right now. And to me, you know, exotic leather is not cheap, but oh my God, is it so worth it? It elevates watches so far. So the point is, I opened up our most recent package and I found purple, right? And it's called our current strap. And I just got this strap in like last week, this set of straps. So I got that in last week, and then I got this watch this week. It all happened at the same time. So I put the purple strap on the purple watch and I said, oh my God, this is a match made in heaven. This is insane. And I knew in that moment that I had to keep this watch.
And I looked at him and said, is that Prince?
Is that Prince? Exactly. Is that the watch collector formerly known as Prince?
Prince. I fucking love Prince.
It's crazy, right? So we're both wearing the current right now.
We
you
are.
On your silver Datejust, and me on this purple Day-Date.
The just, I mean, how watches age and how the dials will patina or fade or do whatever. I think like when I was younger, I don't know if I would have liked the idea of it, because I would have looked at it and said, oh, I'm going to spend 10K or 12K on a watch, or 5K even, depending on what watch you're getting. And like, oh, it's not always going to be perfect.
Right.
And that changed as I saw Rolly's watch. See the bezel fade, and I don't know. To me now, it's like, oh, it's like, no, like that watch has character now.
Yep.
Like it's been around the block. It's been through some shit.
Yeah.
And to me now, I look forward to when my Rolex will hopefully the dial will patina a little bit more and become more unique and almost more like a one of one.
For sure.
Which that watch is. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's ways to try to age it and do all this stuff, but that's just.
This is a one of one.
That's a one of one.
This is a one of one.
And I think everyone's watch. The beautiful thing about it then is everyone's watch kind of, you know, no matter who has a Datejust or a Day-Date, eventually it almost becomes a one-on-one.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is an interesting way to think about it. I've never really thought of it like that.
You're dead on. You're exactly right. You know, one of the reasons, you know, why. So a little bit of history. The Rolex Day-Date was introduced in 1956. It was the first watch to feature the day in full text. But I think that more importantly than that, or maybe that gave way into it, but it became the leader's watch very quickly, and which gets into our conversation a little bit later about why Rolex is such a is not the default, but the inevitable. There's an inevitable birth and return to Rolex. Rolex is the soil of the watch industry, right? I mean, where we all return to dust, right? I mean, that's what it is. So introduced in '56, the only Rolex to have ever to have never been produced serially in steel. It is exclusively in precious metal, predominantly in yellow gold, and then secondarily in rose and white, occasionally in platinum. I think one of the best dates of all time, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, is the platinum date, the new one, 36 with baguettes. I will buy that watch. There's no question. There's literally no question.
You precious metal whore.
Oh yeah, I love it so much. My buddy just got one, and it's literally perfect. I was sizing him up. He's recently been working out, so he looked a little bit bigger. But I was sizing him up like, do you think I could take this guy right now? Because this watch is nice. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, he was looking a little too good, and I don't know. I would have needed a knife. And I didn't want to kill the poor bastard, we go way back, So anyway, this is not my achievement watch. Right. This watch truly is a case of watch collecting. The gold Rolex is like the achievement watch. Well, really, the Rolex is the achievement watch, and then the gold Rolex all the more. Right. It's like it's the watch you get when you retire. You got a date when you retired.
Yeah.
It was like that. My career is behind me. I did it. And that's beautiful. It's a very beautiful, very poetic thing. My mom gifted my dad a gold Rolex, made a whole film about it, and you guys can go watch it. We'll link down below. And that whole film was about arriving. Right? Not to say that you've amassed wealth. That is not the point. But you've made yourself proud, right, in a very real and very large way. That's amazing. That's how these watches as a brand have been marketed for certainly. But this date specifically, these yellow gold, 36 millimeter oysters specifically, yellow gold, but precious metal. That's the essence, right? My achievement watch was the GMT. This will never mean anything to me compared to the GMT. This is a meaningless watch in my life.
Interesting.
Until I get a bunch of memories with it. But the point is, I purchased this watch simply not to mark achievement, which was me and my dad and this generational like hustle and work. And this was. I've been in this business for a long time. I've been in this business for 9 years, which is more than some, obviously way less than others. But for me, that's a while. And if there's one thing I've learned, there's many things I've learned, but there's one thing I've learned that's you are in a very unique position as a watch dealer where hundreds, thousands of watches cross your desk in a year, right? And you have the unique opportunity to kind of cherry pick the ones that you think are really, really special. The ones that you really, in a very large way, in a 5-year way, in a 20-year way, in a 30-year way, it would be unwise to part with now, because you're going to regret that someday. And when I saw this purple date, a watch that I think is so unusual and so odd that could truly become as equally synonymous with like me as my blue Datejust. You put a blue Datejust out on Instagram, particularly now with a green strap, but it's like a lot of people would remember that that's my watch.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just because it was the only watch that I wore for so many years, and I talked about the Datejust so often. Like a blue Datejust is kind of a little bit of a thing, right? The same way a lot of watch guys have their things. For a long time, Federico had this Moser, and Federico was kind of at the beginning of, I don't know if he still has it, but he was kind of at the beginning of Moser. And then when when you had a Moser, it was kind of a Federico thing, period. Ben Clymer the same. I mean, Ben had Universal Genève. You know what I mean? Like all these different guys. Christian Hagen had weird watches. He had all these different guys. He had 5980. Before it was popular. All these watch influencers. Have the watches that are associated with them. And I think that because of how unusual this is and how it kind of takes a little bit of a creep to wear it, this is very much of a me watch.
Today's episode is brought to you by Henson Shaving.
I will never find an alternative subscription service, right, like a cheap out company when it comes to my face. I love finding alternatives in watches, sure, try to scratch an itch for less, fine. Not in shaving. I need primo quality. This is the moneymaker, be it on YouTube or be it at the bar, right? This is really what's getting me through, and I don't have too much to work with on the looks end, so I can't have scratches, I can't have bumps. I need a perfect, right, shaving experience, and I've been trusting Henson for a little while now, and I'm very glad I have.
Agreed. I've used the cheap subscription razors, and I break out every time I shave, which is why I'm growing the beard out a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because you have to hide when you've done it. You get all bruises and bumps. It's terrible. It can't have it at all. So Henson Shaving is who we use. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer, actually, that has made parts for the International Space Station and Mars rover, and now they're bringing that same family tradition of precision engineering into the shaving world. No wonder why their products are so good. And the practical explanation as to why they're so good is because Henson Shaving understands the mechanics, the physics of the shaving experience. Razor blades are like diving boards, and the more support you get, the safer the shave. And Henson razors give you exactly that. The ultimate support, the ultimate precision in shaving. That means you have a stable, secure shaving experience that just, for me, has been absolutely incredible. I'm actually not shaving at the moment, and I never shave my mustache, but I always shave my face. And it's been incredible. And they have a clog-free design. The razor has these built-in channels that evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. These razors are amazing, which makes perfect sense because that's exactly what Henson Shaving set out to build. Not the perfect razor business, but the best razor itself. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, no planned obsolescence, just premium shaving.
Once you own a Henson razor, it is only $3 to $5 to change your blades each year.
Incredibly affordable. So definitely head over to hensonshaving.com/Theo and claim your offer of 2 years worth of blades for free with your razor. Just add them to the cart. That is literally 100 blades for free. Head on over to hensonshaving.com/Theo. That is an incredible offer. Head on over.
The question that I was going to ask, or that kind of comes to mind, in your 9 years of doing this, have you seen a watch either that you've purchased or out in public that is as unique as something like that?
I mean, I've seen things that are as unique, certainly, but have not at this price point.
Yeah,
generally
okay, that's
speaking. Fair. I mean, there are things. There are things at $3,000 that are extremely unique. There's no question about that. But when you're in the Rolex world, and you're talking about truly unique and wild, this is unusually affordable. I mean, period.
Yeah.
These watches, these day dates on a bracelet are maybe worth, somewhere between $15,000 to $18,000. This is a head only, but the dial alone here is probably worth quite a bit of money because of how marketable it is, how special it is. And some people could try to replicate it, but I don't think they'd be very successful. I've never seen anything like this.
Me neither. And what was I going to say? Going back to obviously, this being a day date, I have my date just. What I love about these watches, and really why I wanted to purchase one too, is there's a few things, but the sense of achievement when you buy your first Rolex. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that have plenty of Rolexes, and some people that don't have one with aspirations, and some people who just don't care for whatever reason, and that's great.
But I'm sure to those people, there's another brand. Those people are in the minority, but those people, there's a brand that represents achievement to them.
100%.
Like there's a watch that they're fawning over. It's just in a global sense, it's more Rolex. But yes.
What I was going to say is that once you put this watch on, I just remember my journey and saving money for years and knowing that I wanted to get a Rolex. Obviously, I still want the GMT, but to make this my first purchase and to commemorate it, it was just such a feeling of joy. And whenever I put this watch on, it's like, oh yeah, I'm still working my ass off to get to the next level.
Yep.
But no, 12-year-old Sam is impressed with himself for doing this.
Totally.
And there's that sense of pride that you have when you're able to put on a Rolex. And then the other thing that I love is this is just a beautiful balance of what I think is dress watch, but also a little bit of a sports watch when you look at the fluted bezel and the sizing and I don't know. You know what I mean?
That really gets us into our next conversation. I want to talk about one more thing before we get there.
Okay.
And the last thing was, I'm definitely very much this way, and you maybe even more than I am. Like, I love color. And I think that you may have loved color before I loved color. Mm-hmm. Like, I bought my blue Datejust. Yeah, that was colorful. Yes. But I would say that you, generally speaking, found the value of color in watches before me.
That's fair.
I think between your Timexes and things like that, like you always talked about colorful watches, and that I've been a really big advocate for that for a couple of years now. But I think you were there first. Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah, and to me, it's just been a really special thing to advocate for in the watch community because it's such a serious place. So I've always encouraged people. Well, I have for the last couple of years. choose orange, right? Buy the wild watch, choose
Mr.
something.
Homesteader said it best.
Yeah, green, purple, pink, whatever. It's fun. It's a watch. It's just a watch,
But that's how I've always looked at this journey. And people take it much more seriously than you or I both do, and how they collect and they want it to be perfect in the sense of this is what I want. I don't necessarily want color in my watch, and that's fine, to each their own. But for me, it's always been, I don't know, you put a purple strap on this and it's like, it stands out a little bit.
I think the Current is an amazing strap. So are really all the ones we recently just picked up.
I'm a fan of plum or purple.
When I did the purple, I knew you had to have one. I was like, it's a Sam strap.
This is me.
And I think that I may have bought this watch just to match you. You know what I mean? It's because it's just amazing. It's just an amazing strap.
To me, that's the fun of watches. And to those viewers that are out there that are nowhere near getting that Rolex, the luxury watch. Like I just bought a new watch myself. It's not gold and it's $100.
Yep.
I bought a Timex T80 Keith Haring collab, which Michael and I just spoke about on a live that I don't believe went live yet. In which case, I actually kind of shit on it a little bit because I said that it's too much like a Casio. But when I thought about it a little bit more and getting one of these watches, I decided that I don't have a digital watch. Let's get a Keith Haring one. This is just fun for me. This is for me.
Yeah.
And I was driving, doing work yesterday, and put the watch on. I just looked at my wrist at this stupid digital watch, and I just laughed. And I was like, I keep the Rolex in a weird way. Like, I don't know. And maybe I am turning into the knockoff Michael. I got a digital strap, and I bought a pair of jeans today. Yeah. Or a digital watch, and I got a pair of jeans today. So I don't know.
That's funny. I think that's the point, right? I think that you kind of are hitting on the point. It's having fun with watches, and it's the same approach at $100 as we're kind of starting to take in the larger price points. It's just like, have fun. It's fun.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Enjoy it.
Like,
don't stress yourself out with this. We're talking about watches. This is enjoyable.
Dress fairly conservative. Like my watches are almost every single day they are louder than my clothing. My clothing is like, I do not wear hypey clothing.
No,
I do not. I really dress pretty much, usually old manish, and then
extremely old manish.
Yeah, like right now is a very hip outfit. Like,
this is good for you. This is young for you.
This is young for me, And even then, I'm wearing like wide jeans. You know what I mean? Like I'm not.
You're 65.
I'm not in style usually, but my watch is usually a little bit louder, right? When I wear a Cartier tank, not so much, but almost anything else is kind of on the louder side, and I just love that. I really do. Straps, as many of you should know, bring a whole world of potential to mix up your watch collection. They breathe new life into watches. They help you pull out different colors. They give them new personality. Straps can be very addictive. I know people with 2 watches and 10 straps because it adds so many facets to a collection in a fairly easy and fun way. So that's why they become such a part of the Theo and Harris culture and identity. I think we sell more exotic straps than almost anybody because I just love them so much and I love sharing them with you. Now let's transition into the broader conversation, that the point really, the main thesis of today's episode, and it's I guess it starts here, right? I know collectors I know a lot of collectors naturally. Collectors that own Zeron and wear a Daytona more often. I know collectors that have MB&F and wear a Day-Date now later in their collecting career, right? I know a collector with the Philippe Dufour that I think he wears a Datejust or an OP. I think it's an OP, right? Now, right, later in life. Later in the collecting journey, which is really interesting because, again, the collecting journey is up, 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 up. Every once in a while lateral, but usually up, right? No one's ever happy. Everyone wants the next thing. And then for some reason later in life, later in the collecting journey, they say, you know what's really good? The white gold sub with a blue bezel. That watch is good. And the reason why the reason why people end up there, and it's kind of the same reason why Rolex is so popular on the front of the line as well, right? When you get into collecting, is I think 2 reasons. There are 2 main categories of reasons. One is product, and then the second is culture. On the material level, a Rolex is exactly what you need, and it's actually all you need. I think that's kind of the point. Rolex, is the oyster case basically, was designed to be elegant enough for aspiration, right? And yet, robust enough for a little bit of a masculine sport feeling, right? Rolex was actually ahead of the curve when we're talking about kind of size. Everyone knows that, not everyone, but in the vintage watch world, a 36 millimeter Rolex is almost always larger than a 36 millimeter Patek or a Vacheron or Omega, right? Rolexes were always a little bit bigger, from their crystals to the thickness of their lugs, everything, right? Rolex was riding this line. It was super ahead of their time of elegance and kind of substance, even on the elegance level. Look at all of the truly elegant Rolexes, the Rolexes that were outliers, right? The Rolexes, not the Day-Dates, not the Datejust, the Rolexes like the King Midas, right? And all those Cellinis. Those Rolexes were not the focus of the brand. They were the outliers of the collection. Rolex made money with those watches, but Rolex knew that that basket was not where their eggs were to be wisely put, because those watches would ultimately go out of style. Rolex knew that those watches were to produce those, to sell those, would be capitalized on the culture, but that was not the future of culture. Whereas a lot of brands didn't understand that. Piaget didn't understand that. A lot of brands didn't understand that, okay? Rolex did, okay? Rolex knew that times will change and those watches will be out of style, but the Oyster is a classic forever.
100%.
These watches are kind of unobjectionable. They're not particularly daring. They're built for the masses, for mass appeal. It is a universal design language. And I don't just think because it's branded. I really think even unbranded, these watches just make sense.
They're perfect.
Yeah.
They really are. And it goes to the testament of the legacy of these creations that there hasn't been much change, in the history of the brand with these watches. They've kind of stayed the same. Different materials. I think what Rolex also does very well is, and why it's also become this trophy-esque of a piece, I think is a couple things. One, they are expensive, but the a cost of entry is not as crazy as a Patek or a Longa.
Right.
I'm not going to say it's affordable because you still have to drop a few $1,000s.
Yeah, it's in the grand scheme of
you can get there.
It's attainable luxury in the grand scheme of luxury culture. And of course, you're right.
Well, I was just going to say, coming from a lower middle class family, and similar to you, when I look at a Patek, it's like, I don't know, I have to be like a lawyer or a doctor to afford that. Where it's like Rolex, like I know so many plumbers that own Rolex, and it's I'm not going to say it's blue collar, but the blue collar worker can aspire to get there and afford it. And then what I think that they also did very well is in a lot of their models also now integrating precious metals. So you can get a Daytona and spend $25,000, or you can get a platinum and spend $70,000.
Exactly.
So I think that that's where they also kind of, as you grow.
14,000, 27 on the secondary market, but 14,000, yeah. But you can get an OP and it's an achievement watch. An OP is like at $6,000. It's a dream to own.
Yeah, I remember when I was in accounting, that's what all of the people would buy when they became like manager. When they had a few, they got that next step where they were making a little bit more money. Yeah, they bought an OP, and they would wear that around the office. I remember seeing it and being like, one day, I just don't want to wait 6 years to do it. You know what I mean? I want to get it sooner. I want it now.
100%.
And you work your way up to it. But I just think that they've just done such a beautiful way.
You're right. Their pricing structure is essentially flawless. It's essentially flawless. The second thing, of course, is beyond the material, beyond the fact that they've just really understood scalable design and marketability. It's the culture. Right? Yes. Rolex has worked so hard, right? Maybe the James Bond one was an accident, but everything else, Rolex has worked so hard back into the 30s, up until modern day, to be synonymous with success, be it on a business level, on a political level, be it on a sports level, and not just with real characters, but even in movies. And I know that Rolex is probably not paying for these endorsements, but the Glengarry Glen Ross scene, is a fantastic testament to Rolex. And they probably didn't even pay for that. That was just Glengarry Glen Ross, right? The writer, David Mamet, right? Basically looking at culture and saying, this message makes sense, right? The idea of a successful, in this case, asshole, is not only wearing a yellow gold Day-Date because he's the best, but he's also so arrogant that it kind of represents it's all he is, right? He's not a fraud. He actually is making a ton of money.
Yeah, of course.
He's kind of a dick about it, but everyone wants to be him, right? Everyone wants to be him.
I mean, I think going off of that too, when you see Tony Soprano in The Sopranos, and whether you like him or hate him or whatever the case is, he's someone who is successful in his field in waste management and had a gold Rolex. Like
100%. He's the boss.
He's the boss. And that's what the boss wears. The boss wears a gold date.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
And they've just, I don't know if it's luck of the draw or if this was, intentional, but like you just said, every time you see Rolex in movies or film, it's oh no, it's the rich guy that's wearing it.
It's also really funny, that in The Sopranos, about The Sopranos for hours, but in The Sopranos, Tony bought a ton of stuff. Tony indulged in luxury goods, right? From cars and jewelry for Carmela and everything, houses, everything. And he never changed his watch. Never changed the watch. Well, changed the watch from episode 1 to episode 2, but that doesn't count, right? They figured out that the day date was the right watch, and they never looked back, right? And that's not to say he didn't buy other watches. The show actually had a ton of intelligent watches, right? There was Christopher's many Cartiers, there was, Tony bought his cousin Brian Camarada the Patek Philippe after the HUD scam. I mean, he knew watches, and yet the people that were, that were doing this costume design said, no. This is the president's watch. This is the boss's watch, and he'd never change this watch because there is nowhere to go but down. There's nowhere up. If that's what you're looking to communicate, if you're looking to communicate power, the day date is it, and you would never change that.
That's fair.
Interesting. Dude, that is interesting.
Rolex just gets it. They just do. I don't know how else to describe it. And plus, growing up in this area, I feel like everyone that I've spoken to, going off of that, it's like, oh no, like everyone aspires to get a Rolex at some point. Yeah. They just have cornered that market of this is what success looks like. Yeah. And they've done a phenomenal job at it. And of course, there's other watches. Yeah. But they just, I don't know. They figured it out.
There's something so comfortable about Rolex, right? There's something that feels like home about Rolex, which is why I think, so many people end up back there because people want to go back home. People want to go to the brand they've got this kind of warm, fuzzy connection to because their dad wore one, right? Like your dad never wore an FP Journe, probably not, right? Like, that doesn't remind you of family. It doesn't remind you of success. Maybe it does when you buy it, but then after that, it doesn't remind you of that. Rolex at scale is home for everybody. Rolex is a bowl of mama's pasta fagioli,
And if it's not home yet, it's like, oh no, like that's the house I'm going to end up in. Like it's the pursuit.
Well, it's very much. It's actually continue.
I was going to say that's the pursuit of achievement of getting to bettering yourself.
But I would even add a step further, right? When people make a ton of money and they achieve a ton of success in their, and they buy their really, really big home, most wealthy people that I know do that. And then I would say disproportionately, they end up scaling back down when they're old because it gets to a point where it's like, why did I know why I did it. That was fun. We have a lot of money. That was fun. But like, this is stupid. I don't want to walk up all these steps. This is dumb. Maybe I know a couple of people that won't sell their house, but most people that I know will scale down into a beautiful home, but they want to be somewhere that's cozy. They don't want to be somewhere with a bunch of empty rooms.
I see where you're going with that.
It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. Rolex is practical, right? Rolex just makes sense. It's a show-off thing, which also the house that these people settle in are also fucking show-off houses. They're just more practical, right? It makes sense. I'm not going to wear a to the beach. I'm going to wear my freaking sub. Yeah. That's it. I've got nothing to prove to anybody. You know what I mean? Like Rolex is just famous and expensive enough if you want to impress most people. And the people that aren't impressed by Rolex, you don't even care they're not impressed because you know what's up anyway, and you're not dying for their approval anyway, right? That's the beautiful thing, right? Rolex is the hometown girl, right? Rolex is the aspiration when you're a child that after you go into the city and you just hook up with a bunch of strange and everyone's in Soho and they're a bunch of fucking influencers and who's flying them all over to Dubai and to Milan, all these different places, but they're super pretty and they've got a ton of money, but they're very complicated. At the end of the day, those girls never feel like home. They don't feel like home. Go home.
You amaze me.
It's the truth. I really mean that. Everything in the world is about sex, apart from sex. That's about power. That's about power. That's from House of Cards, I think. I think I saw House of Cards and I heard that line and that was it. I turned the show off. I'm like, that's it. I got everything I needed out of the show. That was it. Period. And he was right.
Oh, hometown girl. That's a good way of describing it.
It is.
It just feels right.
And I don't mean like just that. I mean like a beautiful, right? I mean like Rolex is the original aspiration.
No, to me, it's like it's similar to what you just said. It's like it's all right. It's the girl that you grew up with, and let's put it this way: you grew up middle class. Maybe her dad was an attorney. They have the nice house in town.
Yeah.
You know, when you were in high school, you were friendly with her, same friend group.
Yeah.
You know, she had a new Mercedes, and you were driving a 2001 PT Cruiser.
Right.
Fun fact: that was my
your
first car.
And what color was it? Maroon or purple?
No, it was gray. It was silver. It was silver, and all my friends would make fun of me and said that I drove a PT Loser.
Oh, you know whose one was red? How you doing? His was red. Awkward. Never mind.
Anyway, so that's so I drove a PT Cruiser. I was really cool in high school, if you couldn't tell.
Yep.
Anyway, you go to she stays local. Maybe you go to college out somewhere else. You come back in. Maybe you're partying in the city. You're hanging out in Soho.
You think you're really cool.
You think you're fucking living life.
All your expensive watch, I had to say equivalent. All these different independents, the MB&Fs, the Zorns, all these different things.
And you know what? You come home and maybe it's Thanksgiving Eve or something, and you run into her at a local bar, and you go, "Shit, Sarah, how the hell have you been?"
Unbelievable.
And then it's just like, whether you get married or not.
Oh my God, Sam Abaticola, I haven't seen you in I don't know how long. You look amazing. You look amazing.
You're gonna take a jab at me there.
No, you look amazing. And then you're like, and then all of a sudden, like you're texting your buddy, like you're in the bathroom, like, dude, I think I'm in love.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. And that's when you settle back down in the suburbs and but it's the point. It really makes sense. And it's not inevitable that this happens, but it's very, very common. And everyone that I know that ended up back in Rolex is very, very content that they did. They tried a lot of stuff. They explored the world of watches. They still own some really neat stuff. I'm not saying they sold off everything, but they're really happy that like they could just like count on their Rolex. Yeah. And that's inevitable. And I love it.
As much as I love them, I just hate that you can't get them.
Yeah.
That's my biggest
shop vintage, right? We shop vintage and we get them all the time. I mean, that's, not only do vintage watches have more character, but they're more affordable and they're gettable,
They are.
I mean, by and large. I mean, go take a look at the Theo and Harris watch shop and pick out something. I mean, there's some amazing vintage Rolexes there right now from Date Just in 1603 with a beautiful blue dial and all these different, vintage oddball Rolexes. I adore the brand. And yeah, I'm so proud to offer them for sale as often as we do. I feel very lucky.
As you should.
And by the way, I announced this watch as I announce a lot of my secret purchases well in advance on Patreon. So go ahead on over to our Patreon. It's our private community where I can post a little bit under the radar without a bunch of people seeing it. And that's it. So it's a perfect private community for watch lovers where we release a podcast every week with different industry guests. We just released an amazing episode the other day with this guy Alexander about his Longa 1 purchase. It was an hour podcast and it was so cool about marketing and about like old money aesthetic and whatever the hell that means, and it was an amazing interview. So definitely head on over to become a member of our Patreon at The Zero. We do events as well. We're actually meeting up in the city next week.
I'm looking forward to it.
It was amazing. But that's it. Go buy a Rolex. Ciao. Whether you're a Submariner guy or a 50 Fathoms guy or a Day-Date guy or an FP Journe guy, you've got to just take a step back and appreciate this history here. This isn't stuff you're going to find in a showcase. This is not mass-produced stuff, which is beautiful in its own right. I mean, this is treasure hunting.